I'm Johanna Curry. I'm the project officer at PD Enterprise Computing under PEO EIS for the Army. I cover ADCP support. How many of you, if any, are familiar with ADCP? Okay. ADCP is the Army's data center consolidation plan. That is the strategy by which the Army is reducing the amount of computing infrastructure in which it invests and leveraging as much commodity computing as possible, enterprise data center computing, infrastructure provided by DISA as well. My area of focus is on the Army Application Migration Business Office and in data center assessment and consolidation. So here's what we'll be talking about today. I want to try to focus a bit on the cloud computing part because that's where we get a lot of interest. So background of the guidance related to cloud computing that the Army has developed and put out. The Secretary of the Army's memo mandating the migration of applications and the closure of data centers. The end-to-end migration process overview for the Army. A little bit about cloud security borrowed liberally from the DoD CIO's cloud office. And some related efforts that we have going on in the Army. I'll take your questions at the end, and my point of contact information will be on the last slide. Please do feel free to stop me during the presentation if you have questions. Okay, so data center consolidation, application migration. These are the memos and the guidance that have been put out both by DoD and by the Army related to the closure of data centers and the migration of applications. Originally, the Army Data Center Consolidation Plan, ADCP, was established in 2011, essentially having teams go out, visit data centers, make recommendations for increasing efficiency, collapsing them, any kind of legacy computing into a main data center IPN using the JIE terminology at each installation. What we realized not too long into that effort is that you can't close a data center until you've moved the applications out of it. You need to depopulate it before you can close. So over on the right, that red border document, that's the ADCP execution order. Here's FITARA, and here in the middle, this other red border document is mandating the migration of applications to core data centers. That's what we started with when the Army Application Migration Business Office was established in 2014. Everything else, all these documents here at the bottom for our cyber, data management, the support for applications in enterprise computing environments from Netcom, and the COE Cloud Generating Force computing environment, the network campaign plan, computing strategy, all this is all since we were established. So our mission has been evolving since we were established in 2014. In the center here, you see SecArmy CSA directive. What that does is that brings a lot of this guidance together into a single document, mandating the closure of data centers on a schedule and mandating the migration of applications in order to make that happen. Okay, so what we originally had was the Undersecretary of the Army signed a memo saying migrate your applications to the core data centers. It needed to be revised in order to kind of align the data center closure and migration activities closer together, put them on a more structured timeline, and to kind of bring all of that guidance into a single document. Still in draft, has not yet been signed. We are anticipating signature in first quarter of 17. So differences between them are the SecArmy memo is much more holistic. It establishes formal governance for the closure of data centers and the migration of applications. And it has measures of success. The original memo was very ad hoc. It was left to the commands, the domains, and the mission areas to make decisions on rationalizing applications prior to their migration. So this establishes a little more structure around that process. here's what the end-to-end migration process looks like. And this is Army-wide. We start here on the left. This is the portfolio management and rationalization piece. Essentially, the Army has reported to itself, self-reported about 8,800 enterprise applications. Enterprise being defined as having users or data that traverse an installation boundary where the application is hosted. So that's what the Army has reported to itself. However, we anticipate that the actual volume will be between 12 and 18,000 applications overall. Now that's not to say every one of them will move. Not all applications will be enterprise. Not all applications will be sustained. So the rationalization process should be taking a look at the inventory of applications, choosing a best of breed through the command, the domains, and the mission areas. And then this part here is the governance through the portfolio. So deciding which capabilities to sustain, whether they need a waiver because they're going to be moved into an ERP function, and to assess what the requirements will be for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And that'll be a key deciding criteria for your enterprise hosting. The blue section in the middle, that's our office, the Army Application Migration Business Office. So what we do is we receive from the domains and mission areas a list of applications that are endorsed for migration. These are ones that are intended to be sustained, need to be migrated out of its current hosting environment, and need to move to an enterprise hosting environment. So we do engineering analysis with some right sizing and some targeted, we will be able to target some providers that meet the technical requirements of the application. Over on the right of the blue box, you see migrate to service providers. There are 4 there. You see commercial cloud. Commercial cloud is a target for us. That's off-premise commercial cloud. The DISA DEC, Milk Cloud, any Milk Cloud environments. And that 4th one is the Army Enterprise Data Center. Through this process, the owner of the application or at the command level, it's up to the command to decide, needs to perform a cost-benefit analysis. And that's to meet a DoD requirement for business case analysis comparing DISA hosting to other available options. And the end state is to close data centers. So we're still looking at the same end state, but this is the process by which we arrive there. Are there any questions about this slide? It's kind of dense.
Just, you mentioned when you talk about the applications, are you finding that some applications are similar to others, so you can reuse them and close some that are closed?
Sure. So I'll give you a great example. There are probably 30 applications for ammunition management, right? Okay. The owner of that function needs to take a look at those applications and select a best of breed, or plan to kill some of those off and reinvest in the ones to make sure that the function meets the requirement. And what we're finding, and I think is going to end up being universal, is that you have an organization, got a couple really smart folks in that organization who say, okay, I have a mission need. None of the applications that are available to me really do what I need them to do. So I'm going to go ahead and build something that meets my need. And then it becomes, just part of your regular business process to use this application. But that application has never been through requirements development. It's never been documented. It's critical to the mission, but it's never actually been documented. So part of this, this rationalization portfolio management is taking a look at those capabilities and making sure that the best ones are fully documented and can be migrated to enterprise hosting. Any other questions on here? Okay. And this process is outlined in the Secretary of the Army's directive on that previous screen. Again, waiting signature. Okay, so cloud. Everybody wants to talk about cloud. I want to talk about cloud security. This is important. When I speak to some of the vendors at conferences, including vendors here, I may say, okay, well, how are you going to support the Army with cloud? And they say, well, you know, we got a FedRAMP. And that tells me immediately that they're not tracking on the majority of what the true requirement is. FedRAMP is minimum baseline to provide services to DoD, let alone to the Army. So I'm going to go through a little bit about what cloud security means for DoD and how Army plans to apply it. Okay, so FedRAMP. Everybody's familiar with FedRAMP. That's the federal program where they assess commercial cloud service providers for minimum ability to protect federal data. There are low, moderate, and high impacts for FedRAMP. You can get an authorization for those. There is also additional control selection for national security systems and for other kinds of DoD data that aren't necessarily the same kind of controls that you would need under FedRAMP. The additional control sets, what used to be referred to as FedRAMP Plus, is represented in the Army's Cloud Computing Security Requirements Guide, the SRG. You'll hear about the SRG a lot. See, these down here at the bottom, these are some of the additional controls. So these must be applied, must be available in a cloud service offering in order for DoD to use it. Any questions about DoD requirements for cloud? Okay. So this is what the Security Requirements Guide is all about. Right now it's at version 1, release 2. Version 1, release 3 is in review and comment. So what the Security Requirements Guide does is it establishes, hey, this is how DoD wants to use commercial cloud service offerings. These are the baseline security requirements for software as a service and also for infrastructure and platform as a service as well. There are impact levels based on the kind of data that's contained in the application. There are levels 2, 4, 5, and 6. 1 and 3 were rolled up into the higher security level. And then there's a lot more to it. So down here, if you don't have it, you'll want to check out DISA, their cloud security page. That'll give you the actual SRG with all the controls. Okay, impact level. Now I hear a lot of people talk about impact level. I want to make sure that we're absolutely clear we're speaking the same language when it comes to impact level. What the impact level is per the SRG is it describes the sensitivity or confidentiality of the information to be stored and processed in that commercial cloud service provider environment. It's also the impact of an event where you lose your confidentiality, integrity, or availability of that information. So what DoD does is assess a cloud service offering against the controls that are outlined in the SRG and issue a provisional authorization at an impact level. So what's here on the bottom, this is really important. Systems and applications that we're assessing for migration, they don't have impact levels. They are aligned to impact levels in an authorization. And cloud service providers don't have impact levels. So if AWS comes to you and says, I have an impact level 4, AWS does not. AWS's GovCloud service offering has an impact 4. And what that means is not every AWS service is authorized to host DoD data at that level. Any questions about impact levels? Nope. Okay. So here's a comparison, a chart that was borrowed from the SRG about what the differences are between the impact levels. So impact level 2, that's public or non-critical mission information. What's for lunch in the cafeteria today? That's impact level 2. The commander's blog, that's impact level 2. The event calendar, impact level 2. Controlled unclassified information or non-CUI. So that's non-critical, non-national security systems. That's impact level 4. So again, remember I said there are plenty of providers that have impact level 2. anyone with a FedRAMP moderate authorization can have a DoD authorization for impact level 2. What we're seeing through our assessment is that probably 75% or more of the applications we've assessed are actually at impact levels 4 and 5. So the market is very narrow for commercial cloud service providers that can accommodate impact levels 4 and 5 data. Yes?
So you're doing the assessment by application?
Yes.
So when you're looking at a data center, you're looking at each application to be migrated, doing this assessment, and the impact level will vary by application?
Yes, correct. So what you want to do is you want to look at the data, the impact level of the data that's included in that application. What would be the risk if it were, if there were a breach, or would it affect your mission if there were unavailability? So that's by application. So when you say look at a data center, data centers do not have impact levels assigned to them. What we want to do is we want to go to a data center and say, what applications do you have? Which of these are enterprise applications? Are they endorsed by the command, the domain and mission area to move? And then let's assess them for where their target is. And impact level 6 down here at the bottom is classified. There are no commercial service providers that are authorized at impact level 6. Yes, sir.
Go back to that previous question.
Yes.
So does that mean that when the command is basically looking at the impact level of the application,
Yes.
then they're going to go find the appropriate, for example, cloud area that is associated with that impact level? Is that what the division has?
So our office for Army, we will only recommend cloud service offerings that align to the impact level of the data in the application. Right. That's how we provide that service. Air Force has an office very similar to ours, a migration business office similar to ours. I believe Navy also has one as well. Their strategies for adopting cloud are similar, but there are some key differences. If you need to have me get the POC information for you for Navy or for Air Force for their migration business offices, please do send me an email and I'll provide that to you. So like I said, vast majority of the applications that we've assessed align to impact levels 4 and 5. Now, this is the DoD. For Army has also established an additional rule that says that Army data must be stored on U.S. soil for any impact level.
So then that would only apply to migrating things that are in the colonies, right? So,
No, sir. Hawaii's U.S. soil.
no, I mean for Oakland, like Korea.
So on the military base, if there were a commercial cloud service provider on the military base on U.S. soil, that would be a target environment. Any questions about the impact levels, this matrix? This can also be found in the SRG. Nope. Okay. Okay, so assessment. How cloud service offerings are assessed, what the inheritance model looks like. So under RMF, the risk management framework, the goal is to assess once and then use that data through the assessment many times. So the inheritance model works like this. Cloud service provider provides their information to a third-party assessing organization. So it has to be an independent organization. 3 PAOs are certified by FedRAMP in order to perform these assessments. Those artifacts and the reports are provided to FedRAMP, the FedRAMP office. DoD requires that a cloud service provider have to have the third party do the assessment. It is possible under FedRAMP for a CSP to provide their own artifacts and for FedRAMP to do an authorization, but DoD will not accept that. DoD also requires the JAB, Provisional Authorization, the Joint Authorization Board. So reviewing those artifacts and the reports in order to provide a provisional authorization under the FedRAMP JAB. DoD says, okay, great. Let me look at my additional controls in the security requirements guide. The DISA authorizing official makes a decision whether to provisionally authorize it for DoD. So they must be, have met the additional controls in the SRG. So these you see flowing down are the artifacts and the reports from the CSP and the 3PAO to FedRAMP to DoD and the DoDAO, and then to the mission owner here at the bottom. So this is how the inheritance model looks. You don't have to do a complete reassessment of everything from the infrastructure up when you want to use a commercial CSP that has an authorization for one of these impact levels that align to your data. And on here, down here on the bottom, this is important also to remember. You see provisional authorization that says that you've met the minimum requirements in order to be authorized to provide services to the federal government and to DoD. Down here is an ATO, right? So ATO is for the workload that you're putting into that commercial cloud service offering. It is not an ATO for the cloud service offering itself. So what you have to do is through the RMF process, if you are planning to use it, you must make sure that the appropriate controls are applied for your workload in that offering for the ATO. Yes, sir.
So if a cloud service provider has an ATO for one service at a level 4, you can go to them, say, I have information, I need the service level 4. You got it, and they go, yeah, and here's our ATO, and we can use it, or no?
No, sir. So the ATO is for the application or the system or the virtual environment that you're standing up in that CSP. There is no ATO for a cloud service offering. There's only the provisional authorization that says this is the minimum. I am providing the rest of the controls required for my own workload. This is my system ATO using that provisional authorization. So there is no ATO for an overall cloud service offering. So for example, let's say I have an application that I want to move into Microsoft Azure, okay? There is no Microsoft Azure ATO that anybody can use. There's no reciprocity for an ATO. My ATO is for my application in that environment. Yes, yes. Every application must have its own ATO for that environment.
For every unit?
For every workload, for every mission, for every application.
Yeah,
Correct, correct.
And that's because your workload and my workload may never cross in the cloud environment.
Right, they may never cross, and we may have different requirements for additional controls that need to be applied based on our system architecture.
But a unit could use somebody else's ATO if they decided that they wanted to participate in that, and they have to join them. Is that allowed?
So are you asking whether if my application can use your ATO that you have for Microsoft Azure?
Well, use your example of the ammunition, right? I think that's free, right?
Yes.
For example, if somebody wants to alter that, they have a slightly different requirement, or they can say, I can go with that ATO and drop my requirement. Are they allowed to do that?
No, no.
So there's no reciprocity.
There is no reciprocity.
Unless they use the same application.
Right, it must be the same application, right. Right, but the intention is not to move multiple instances of the same application into a cloud environment. You wouldn't want to do that. If it's an enterprise application, it should be available. That function should be available to whoever needs to use it. Any other questions about inheritance? Okay, so this is an example of how Army would authorize a workload on infrastructure as a service in commercial cloud. Very basic minimum, you must be FedRAMP compliant, right? You cannot get a DoD PA without at least being FedRAMP compliant. The DoD provisional authorization. Army requires that a cloud service offering have a provisional authorization by DoD before you can be used by Army customers. So Army provisional authorization. There is no additional assessment that happens in Army. The Army's AO, Ms. Miller at CIOG-6 Cybersecurity Directorate, has signed a memorandum that says, I accept the DoD provisional authorizations as having been completed, and that every individual application must have its own ATO, leveraging those PAs. And then there's the system and application ATO. So the mission owner must assess residual risk from the inherited controls from the previous authorizations and make an authorization decision for an interim authority to test, interim authority to operate, or an ATO at the system or application boundary. Okay? So there is no, let me stand up a virtual data center and dump all of my applications into it, right? Every system and application must have its own ATO. Any questions about how this stacks up?
I'm surprised to see networking on it, but I guess I don't understand how that's being utilized within that.
Okay. So the cloud service offering managed by the cloud service provider is networking, storage, servers, and up to the hypervisor level. So they provide all of the infrastructure. That's the infrastructure as a service. What you as a mission owner would provide would be the operating systems, applications, any middleware that you have, any web interfaces that you have. They're all managed by you as the mission owner.
So what would be present on the post?
This is all off-premise commercial cloud service offerings.
I have a question. Once a cloud provider has a original FedRAMP authorization, and then you are loading more applications into that cloud provider, how long does this process, estimated take? Is that slowing down the move to the cloud? Is it pretty quick once they have baseline FedRAMP to move applications through this process? Or is it
Right. So, yeah, it is slow. I will be completely honest with you, right? So FedRAMP has established some changes to their process to do this a little more rapidly, but that is slow as well. DoD, however, the authorization process for DoD at those higher impact levels, which have additional controls on top of FedRAMP, that is slow. So when I said the market is very narrow for cloud service providers with offerings at impact levels 4 and 5, there are 3 providers out there now that have those authorizations, but there are probably 15 up to maybe 20 cloud service offerings also at impact levels 4 and 5. So that market will be expanding as soon as those assessments are finished, but they must be done by DoD. Unless an agency wants to invest in doing the assessment. For example, Air Force can do the assessment, provide the results to DoD. DoD will say, okay, thanks for all your artifacts. I accept it. Here's a PA. And that PA then can be leveraged by any DoD organization.
that's not going to the chat? That would be an agency direct response?
No, that's FedRAMP, right? The DoD authorizing official, that's at DISA. Right? So that's the additional provisional authorization that you must get to provide to DoD. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Combining this and the inheritance one, some cloud service provider would get a DoD provisional ATO for what it's providing a cloud service offering. You would log on top of the operating systems, applications, and validation of whatever controls that come with that. Then you go get a provisional ATO from the Army. Is that the idea?
No, your system application must have an ATO, not a provisional. These lower authorizations, those are provisional.
When does the Army provisional ATO occur? At what point?
Okay, so what the Army has done, the Army's AO has distributed a memo that says, I accept the DoD provisional authorization as adequate, right?
Okay. So then you get all that,
Mm-hmm.
Army provisional ATO, because it's accepted.
Right.
from DoD.
Correct.
environment and the controls associated with that, get those verified, and you're included.
Right, your own AO must make that ATO
Yeah,
decision,
okay,
right?
cool.
That doesn't go up to the cybersecurity director at headquarters.
Just a quick question. You
Yes.
said the three, Azure, AWS, and then is it software, or who's the third?
The third one is Oracle Service Cloud. And so when I say Oracle, I mean there is a specific cloud service offering from Oracle that is authorized at that level. And I think it's a CRM solution. Any other questions about this? Now this is infrastructure as a service, right? So if you are leveraging an authorization that DoD has provided for platform as a service, your operating systems and your middle tier here, those will be provided by the cloud service provider. All you manage then is your applications and your data, your user accounts on top of it. Software as a service, everything is managed by the cloud service provider. So you manage your applications, your data, and your users.
Yeah, I mean, I would preface it with Army Cloud Infrastructure as a Service authorization, because in general, when I hear infrastructure as a service, that means OEMs are going to start taking over on-base premise gear and the sustainment of that.
So none of that applies for FedRAMP, right? FedRAMP is not assessing those. That's why this graphic is inherently commercial service providers off-premise.
Been a lot of reference to the RMF certification process. So for the ongoing certification maintenance of a, per se, ATO, other than ones you have to do now and then, for just the traverses of what kind of, are there any tools that the Army's using to verify the sustainment of all the
So you mean the continuous monitoring?
continuous monitoring? Are there
So,
any tools they're using?
No, there are not.
Okay.
Not that Army is using. Yes, sir.
And so there's three services that service providers that have offerings that are 1.5. Is there a government one for 6?
A government,
Is
so,
there a government service provider for
so,
separate that runs
so government service providers aren't on the commercial internet. This is for services that are on the commercial internet. So if it's sitting on the DODIN, right, okay. So that's not a FedRAMP or the provisional authorization.
So cloud services on DODIN fall under some other process?
So cloud services on DODIN are contracted separately. I believe DISA has one for MilCloud 2.0. They're planning to do commercial service provider for that. I have a little bit later about the Army Private Cloud Enterprise. Yeah, that's a different authorization process. It's not using FedRAMP, for example, right? The controls for the SRG do need to be applied at the appropriate security level. Yes, sir.
Does that mean if they're going to use, for example, C2S?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Does that mean if they're going to use the C2S, like AWS and C2S, that they would still go through the same process?
Yes.
Even though it has the appropriate FedRAMP high?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so what's important to remember about the DoD provisional authorization is that it does not include every service from that commercial service provider. That individual service from that provider, service offering from that provider must be assessed in order for it to be included in the authorization that's been given by DoD.
That's still no reciprocity, right? So if they go to a service that's been assessed by a different agency, they still have to go back and get it with an Army. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, Army has not established any reciprocity with any other services for authorizations. Any other questions about this? This one usually gets a lot of questions. There's a lot in here.
So could you, I mean, for example, say the defense travel system, one that goes across services.
Yes.
How would that play into this if DTS wanted to start using the cloud? How would that?
Okay, so because that is an OSD system, the DoD CIO's cloud office would assess that for the appropriate cloud security, for the appropriate cloud service offering where it could be rehosted. That doesn't come through the Army assessment process.
So we would just take that for beta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any, the services do not have a role in assessing OSD applications for migration. Any other questions here? Okay, so cloud access point. We went through all of that to talk about how authorizations work. An additional requirement from DoD is the cloud access point. And the cloud access point is required for any applications that are hosted off-premise commercial cloud at impact levels 4 and 5. So this is not, I wouldn't call this, it needs to be kind of described. So what we're used to when we access the internet here from within the DoD, we go through the internet access point. The cloud access point is a service from DISA that performs some inspection services, some security-related services at the edge of the DoD prior to us using commercial cloud. So anything that's hosted out on the internet for these higher impact levels that must traverse the cloud access point. There is a request process with DISA in order to establish a commercial cloud service offering connection to the CAP, and they have the responsibility for monitoring it. I'm pretty sure, hasn't happened yet, but I'm pretty sure that there will be some charge from DISA for CAP connectivity. Yeah. But I guess what's nice about not being the first out the gate is that once it's been established, the CAP connection has been established for a cloud service offering, the following mission owners who want to use the same CSO don't have to do that request process again. But they do want to know who's using that connection because they'll need to expand the capacity. Any questions about CAP?
So who creates the CAP?
DISA owns the CAP. So it's not a place, it's a service. The accreditation for the CAP belongs to DISA. Should Army decide it wants to stand up a CAP, it'll have to be accredited by DISA. Navy has its own CAP that was accredited by DISA, providing services to Navy customers only. And only for one cloud service offering. Any questions about the CAP? This is what exists today. So, emerging secure cloud computing architecture. So what this is kind of like a CAP plus. DISA's strategy for managing additional security-related services in commercial cloud. This can be found on the DISA website if you look up Secure Cloud Computing Architecture. Features the cloud access point, again, the boundary protection, as I described on the previous slide. Also includes a virtual data center security stack. Same thing here, the virtual data center management services, so like a managed service offering from DISA, and the Trusted Cloud Credential Manager. So these are additional services that DISA intends to provide to, again, the impact level 4 and 5 authorized cloud service offerings. And the functional requirements are expected to be published in January. But you can see the initial, you'll see this graphic and some further description on the DISA website. So this right now is, it's PowerPoint deep. Any questions about SCCA? Doesn't exist yet. Looks like it'll be pretty cool. Again, I'm pretty sure there'll be a charge for it. Okay, related efforts. So I think there were some questions about on-premise services. This is some of the related efforts for Army. Many of you may have heard the Army Private Cloud Enterprise Pilot. That is on-premise private cloud. The pilot is at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. This is a NetCom-initiated pilot. It is intended for Army to learn how to manage applications, systems, and services in a commercial cloud service offering. It is on-premise, so again, there's no FedRAMP authorization required for it. However, it must meet the Security Requirements Guide standards for up to impact level 5. And then further up to impact level 6. So one of the things about private cloud on-premise is that because it's on-premise, it's already sitting on the DOD, there's no CAP connection required.
And we use the terminology private, similar to the Air Force uses the terminology of Pathfinder, and it just means the demo to a possible city in one way or the other.
Correct. So Army Enterprise Data Center, AEDC. 4 enterprise data centers in CONUS, 6 OCONUS, one of which I think they're projecting to put here at Shafter. Is a hybrid architecture, so it'll be some cloud and some legacy hosting as well. So trying to align the Army enterprise data centers instead of being environments that have an accreditation at the boundary wherein you could use a tenant security plan to sit in there and not have your own accreditation, trying to make it closer to commoditized computing where you would need your own authorization, you would manage your own application. It's truly closer to infrastructure and platform as a service hosting.
The IBM data center at Redstone, you mentioned it being a pilot. If that proves out to be successful, do you think that's a trend that may continue with the
Yes. Yeah, that's the expectation. So again, it's not an IBM data center. Right. It is a private cloud service offering, right? Or commercially owned and operated private cloud service offering. It is currently under protest, so yeah. So that's kind of still up in the air. But they do also have another data center at Redstone that they've advertised as cloud, which doesn't actually meet what the cloud standards are. So that's a different thing. I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. But yes, the intention is to, when I say hybrid architecture, some cloud, some legacy, some of this will be managed by Army, and some of this will be managed by commercially owned and operated cloud service providers. And Global Enterprise Fabric, this is a NetComm-owned concept for NetOps, modernizing what's included in an ISN with software-defined networks, storage, and services on-premise. So these are related to the Army's efforts to consolidate and modernize its computing. Any questions about this slide?
Who's responsible for running the enterprise data centers? Is there a particular office group, whatever, so making decisions for the physical infrastructure on thermal efficiency, et cetera?
Yes. Okay. So when we talk about central management and oversight, CND services through Second Army and NetComm for the Army enterprise data centers, okay? Commercially owned, commercially operated cloud services also within those data centers. So essentially those providers could sell to other organizations as well. Those are services that are not managed by the Army. Army Private Cloud Enterprise, those are the 4 locations. Those are also the same Army Enterprise data centers. That direction is included in the Secretary of the Army's directive that, again, has yet to be signed. But those are the enduring data centers in CONUS. And then there's other on-premises DoD, so the DEX and MilCloud. Off-premise commercial CSP, trying to move as much impact level 4 to those services as possible, so that that really is the bulk of the applications for the Army, is at impact level 4. So that's what the hybrid environment looks like. Now I'm going to move back one. One? Yeah, one. Okay. Army data centers, 2025 and beyond. This is what the goal is. This is the intention to collapse down to. Again, these locations are notional. So you see here, Shafter, Hawaii is an Army Enterprise Data Center, one of the Oconus locations. Humphreys and Walker in Korea. We've got Grafenwehr and Kaiserslautern in Germany. And then Carson, Redstone, Fort Knox, and Bragg. Yeah, that's Bragg. So applications will be moving from the edges to the enterprise data centers.
So yeah, this helps a lot because you're also highlighting the DISA
Yes.
core data center. So I was getting confused when you kept, like when you said Shafter's Army.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Terminology.
And then these are the locations with the JRSS as well. I don't think there's any possible enterprise data center. That would be the regional neck there at Redstone as well. And then these are the DISA CDCs. So then every remaining camp host base installation would have an ISN. So not hosting any enterprise applications at those on installations any longer, moving all those to enterprise hosting. Any questions about this slide? So again, this is in the SEC Army's directive, not signed yet. It's been through staffing. Don't anticipate any further changes, but we just had an election, so you never know. Okay, enterprise hosting. So this is, this is the dream end state where we're providing all these wonderful services and cloud computing, using commodity computing as much as possible, where we are monitoring security as a continuous process here. Storage, switching, and servers, that's on the inside. Virtualization, cloud services, hosted SaaS, UC. A lot of folks have heard about unified capabilities. UC is up here. Cloud storage, big data, Army software marketplace. That would be where you would go to download your applications that you need. That's still in concept. And on-demand computing. You've got the Army Enterprise Data Centers here, sitting inside EndtoEnd. Commercial access point here, where you're getting to the cloud through the CAP. So it's a nice picture. We're not there yet, but that's what we hope it'll look like in the end. And the intention is to be consistent, survivable, robust, and make sure that we're worried less about COOP as, it's got to be 200 miles away. We're, ensuring availability using modernized computing. Questions?
The one at data center, the Army Unique Data Center at Carson.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any interaction between Peterson, Streeter, the Air Force Academy, Cheyenne Mountain?
So, right. So,
That's
when we're saying Army Enterprise Data Center, right, at Carson, that service should be available to Air Force should they decide to leverage it. I don't believe that there is intended to be a separate enterprise data center aside from that one. Okay, and that is being worked through the DoD CIO's data center. Right. So that is a service that should be available to anybody that's on an installation.
Question: some of the civilian agencies, obviously not DoD, or some, as they are migrating applications, are starting to leverage commercial enterprises and commercial data centers.
Mm-hmm.
Those obviously don't require network connectivity.
Correct.
Lower impact level. With the Army and even impact level 2, would you look at commercial facilities for cost savings, or would they have to go into a DISA or a built cloud or on base?
So for an impact level 2, we would never try to move it into a data center that wasn't cloud, right? We want to leverage as much commercial cloud as possible, right? So impact level 2, we don't want to keep any of that stuff on premise. We don't want to keep any of it that's not in a commercial cloud environment. Impact level 4, move as much of that to commercial cloud off premise as possible. That way we are reducing our attack surface for what's sitting on EndtoEnd.
It's just anything level 4 above
Correct. Oh, and RF John, I forgot to mention that, all the way down there on the bottom right. Okay. I promised my contact information. My product lead is Mr. Dennis Kelly. He is the product lead for all of enterprise computing. Mr. Mitchell, who presented yesterday, is also my boss. He is the deputy product lead for enterprise computing. I'm Johanna Curry. I'm the project officer for ADCP support, so data center assessment, consolidation, and application migration. The CIO G6 ADCP chief is Mr. Bognar.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you so much for coming.